Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Nerds on the Run. This is our E3 series that we're putting together just on the things that were most interesting to the things we're paying attention to on the channel. And as I said in the last part of the series, if you want to see anything about Xbox, if you want to see anything about Bethesda Game Studios, let us know. I didn't include everything in there, but I try to include what we found the most fascinating. If you would, please leave a like to let us know that we're doing a good job, or leave a comment if you'd like us to do a better job. And also leave a comment if you want to let us know what's interesting to you. Maybe there's some things we didn't cover that you care about. Let us know and give us some feedback, and subscribe if you want to be a part of where the channel goes next. So this part of our E3 series, oh man, sorry, there's some construction outside. This part of our series, we're going to be covering Square and then Ubisoft and kind of some random in-between stuff. So I should inform you all, I'm trying to put information out there that like I said, found interesting, but I don't have a ton of times for these games. So hopefully these notes will help me out a little bit, because I'm out of the loop with some of this stuff. So Final Fantasy VII Remake is what Square obviously is putting the most information out there on. I do have a soft spot as an old gamer for Final Fantasy VII. I've kind of co-played it with friends. I've never really been one to a completionist, especially when it comes to the JRPGs. But they did announce. I mean, the graphics are super stunning. They look even better than the pre-rendered scenes of yesteryear. It's coming out March 3rd, so next March is going to be a busy month. There's quite a lot coming around that time between. From Square, from Microsoft, and from Nintendo. So the graphics are stellar, absolutely out of this world. The score and the menu effects really tickle that nostalgic bone. The menu effects has the little kind of gloved hand that sort of selects amongst items, and has that very satisfying sort of bleep. And the score is just super good. It's cut together using both the battle music and some of the, I don't know if it was the overworld music or the old boss music, but they have some really cool effects in this game. So Midgar is its own game. Midgar is the starting area of Final Fantasy VII, and it looks like it's its own game. It looks like this entire two Blu-rays worth of content, they say, game is going to take place in just Midgar, and so it looks like this might be a trilogy, or at least a two-part of game. It's similar to what they were talking about with the game being episodic before, but they didn't actually go into detail with that. So I don't know that it's going to be episodic, or if they're just going to kind of make it more like kind of like what they did, but more directly sequel-wise with like 10, 10-2, etc. This might be like just Final Fantasy VII. I don't know if they'll call it Final Fantasy VII 2 or whatever, whatever they end up doing. But it'll definitely be interesting. It looks like they're adding lore and kind of going into more detail. The combat kind of has a Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 12 or 13 sort of vibe to it, where there's real-time stuff, there's some statistical stuff going on under the hood, and then they sort of have this tactical mode, kind of a sort of like akin to a VATS Fallout, where time slows way down, and you can build meters, you can use materia to cast spells, you can execute special moves, and then you just do normal attacks and blocks in real time. So it sounds really cool, if I'm honest. I do kind of enjoy, one of my favorite games of all time is the Paper Mario 1, and in general the Paper Mario series. So I do have patience for turn-based games in the right context, but I've generally not been that stoked about some of the Final Fantasy games. But with this sort of right mix between real time and strategic action, that could be really excellent. So I'm optimistic. I'm more optimistic than I was about this game before, it being announced too early and handled by the wrong studios and stuff. It looks like it's in a good space now. The only other thing that I really care to touch on from Square is, of course, the Avengers game. They did mention there would be some unique content coming out for the PS4 version of Avengers, though they didn't get specifically into that. I suspect because they are talking about treating this as a games as service, which I was a little bummed to hear. It is coming out March 15th, and I'm hopeful that whatever content is included with it is. They did say a lot of the post content I believe was going to be the post-release content was going to be free. Somebody correct me on that, because now that I say it out loud, I don't know that for a fact. I'm sure there will be some, pay to win or pay to play content, but they have super skilled voice actors. I thought they did a really smart thing by kind of putting the round table of voice actors together, just to sort of put names to faces. And they got big names: Troy Baker, Nolan North, playing the likes of Hulk and Iron Man respectively. I wasn't as familiar with the work of the other voice actors, though I'd certainly heard of them before. And I'm happy to hear that there's going to be an original story with a 4-player online available, and it sounds like there's going to be an offline, just single player as well. Um, I'm not super psyched about the games as service thing, so that put a little bit of a dampener on it for me. But it, um, but I believe it's going to be a fun one. So the Avengers game did have some closed demos that came out more recently, offhands demos, and they did show a lot of. There's a lot of on the rails stuff with Iron Man. There's a lot of kind of quick time event type stuff with some of the other characters. I've heard Hulk and Thor are the envy of the game to play as. They have some fun content with those two characters specifically. I'm hoping they can find some good balance before the game comes out in a year's time to really put some stuff together for that one. Because if it does hold true to that sort of Avengers power fantasy, it could really be one of the best games of the year. So I'm very, very hopeful. I don't know if I'm optimistic. Certainly we'll get into it in our Nintendo video a little bit later. Marvel Ultimate Alliance actually is something I'm a little bit more excited about as far as the kind of superhero games go. But I am very happy to see the impressive look of this one and sort of the execution so far with Avengers. So that's all I have for Square. The next thing we're going to cover is mostly going to be Ubisoft and just some other kind of random tidbits here and there, that some catch-all stuff. So I have been out for the last season and a half or two, but Rainbow Six Siege was a game that was very near and dear to me. I had a squad that I ran with quite often with that one. Sorry, pardon me for the shaking here. Just gotta adjust. So Rainbow Six Siege definitely is going to have some interesting content. I'm liking some acknowledgement of how toxic the community became. I was somebody that was participating in the community in a relatively positive manner. The salt fuel of that game certainly was strong with me sometimes, but I never took it out on my teammates. I was not one of the people that was on those servers just executing teammates as soon as the round started and all that kind of junk. So they are doing a very interesting reverse friendly fire mechanic. Now, those of you that stick with the sort of PvP balance stuff across games have heard some really interesting stuff that's happened with Red Dead recently about aggressive, how to handle aggressive players and how to handle players that are more passive. Fallout 76 had a lot of this kind of like slap damage, and then as fire was returned, full damage would be in effect. This game has implemented it in yet another way called reverse friendly fire, where basically over a certain damage threshold, the damage that the statistical numerical damage that you're imparting onto your own teammates actually gets rebounded and put upon you. So if you try to kill somebody, you'll actually just drop dead beyond a certain point. So to not totally remove realism, say in an instance, in a tactical instance, where one of your teammates is squaring off against another opponent and you maybe hit them in the line of fire, that could happen in a kind of crossfire situation. So it doesn't totally remove any danger of friendly fire, but if there's intentional, malicious, active attacking just for the sake of, I can tell you, I've both suffered from it and benefited from it in that game, where I'll hop in as the operators on the attacking side, and before we even get done with the drone phase, the defenders are killing each other, and before we can even get to the room where the bombs or the hostage or whatever is, the defenders have all but one died, and the one that's left is freaking limping around on his last legs. You sneeze on him and you win. It's not very fun. I've also been on the other side of it, where I'm either one of the defenders that has died, or I'll have return fire in defense, and clock, I tell you now, My apologies. So, I am hopeful that because of the changes in balance going on there, there's going to be a lot less of this sort of friendly fire stuff and toxicity going on. They're also doing a couple of new operators, of course, and they're kind of continuing their plan to. It looks like the new operator was like some kind of CIA guy who has some kind of tech glasses that allow him to see through like smoke screens and stuff. So I'm really happy with all the operators. One of the developers basically explained the game as like playing chess, and there's new chess pieces all the time and stuff like that. So it's a really solid. I think Phantom Sight is going to be the name of the new update. But it's a really solid system they've got going there, and I hope they do keep on continuing as they are suggesting to support it into the next generation as well. So Phantom Sight is coming out. That's going to be the new season / content pack in Rainbow Six Siege. And I do specify Siege because they now apparently are starting a sister team that's coming out with a totally PvE game or cooperative game, Rainbow Six Quarantine. So it looks like it's running off the same engine as Siege, as far as I can tell, but it is a total PVE. I don't know if they're cashing in too late on this one, if I'm honest, y'all, but it's a parasite, some sort of parasite epidemic. It's a zombie shooter. It's their response to Call of Duty Zombies. It's their response to that kind of stuff. So I am appreciative of what they're trying to do. I do like the PVE element of it, and the Twitch-based combat and the controls of Rainbow Six are super satisfying, much tighter than most of the other shooters out there, in my opinion. So I like the idea of what they're doing there, and I hope it's not bad. One more thing from Ubisoft, just as far as something that I was kind of stoked about. I believe they announced a launch date of February 25th of next year for a game called Gods and Monsters. It has a very sort of painterly style to it, like a really interesting kind of aesthetic, and definitely has it definitely has kind of a Breath of the Wild / maybe like a Assassin's Creed light vibe. It is the developer of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which I find very interesting. It has a very kind of mythology vibe to this game, Gods and Monsters. And my suspicion is the team, as they developed things, and came into contact with things from the historical side of Assassin's Creed, all the larger than life things that they kind of find ways to sneak into Assassin's Creed, all the larger than life parts of history and mythology and stuff like that are super fascinating. So if they're going to turn that into the basis of the content and the lore of this game, that's really imaginative and cool. So I'm looking forward to that one. We'll see what it's going to be like. If it's basically just Assassin's Creed but in a totally fantastical realm, that could be cool. If it has like the RPG depth of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, that's certainly a worthwhile endeavor. So I'm excited. Keep an eye on that one. Last thing from Ubi that I saw was actually there were a couple other things. Watch Dogs Legion takes place in London and has a really ambitious idea of kind of being able to recruit operatives and change operatives, on your team, whether you're a CIA guy or you're an old lady. They showed this old lady smack somebody and kind of chest roll very slowly over a half waist high bar. I'm really interested. How I've never really played a game that has no main character in it. I guess the central AI, Bagley, I think his name was, might be kind of a main character. But making constant recruits and having like permadeath when they drop is just really different, and I think it could be fun. I played a fair bit, probably more than most actually. Most gave up on the first Watch Dogs. I played a fair bit of the first Watch Dogs, and I dropped off for obvious reasons that everyone's said before. And I didn't really give the second one a chance, if I'm honest, though I did hear it was an improvement. So, this might be the one I come back to. We'll have to see. If the permadeath part of the roster really reminds, if you want some insight into my age and how long I've been gaming, one of the old Rainbow Six games back in the day, Athena Sword, had all the main operatives like from the Tom Clancy books in their roster, and when they died, you would lose them permanently. And eventually, if all the characters died, it would just start coming up with these randomly generated operatives, like whatever Explosion Expert 6 and stuff like that. So, not that I would know or die enough to access those characters. So anyway, I'm really excited about the idea of Watch Dogs Legion, and we'll see where it goes. There's the makers of Always Sunny, or I should say rather Mac from Always Sunny, did bust out this Mythic Quest game, or rather Mythic Quest show about game developers. It looks funny. It's an Apple Plus exclusive, and I'm not looking for another streaming service, so I'm not sure if I'm going to ever check that one out. But I do adore the Always Sunny folks, so I'm wondering what that one's going to be like. The last thing was Ghost Recon Breakpoint. This has been popping up for the last couple months now, but they did allow a beta for September the 5th this year, and I think and they're also coming out with like this special service called Delta Company. It looks like an online kind of like for those of you that were, probably not many of you, but for those of you that played Wii U, there was like a Miiverse. Like each game had its own page where you could sort of do like a Reddit thread kind of about the game, but within the game, not obviously going to Reddit.com. So it has an interesting idea behind it. They're trying to foster a healthy community, and I hope they succeed in the way that they have with Siege. I hope they succeed with that, and maybe they even avoid some of the toxicity of that, because it's a co-op focused game. So I'm optimistic about that. But that's all we've got for kind of the Ubisoft stuff. There wasn't anything from Rocksteady, which I was sad about. There wasn't anything from Beyond Good and Evil 2 from Ubisoft, which I'm not surprised, but for as much as they showed about that game, I was really hoping for a deep dive on like, here's when the release date is. The game's nowhere near done, and if they make it, everything I see about the game, I love it more, and everything I hear about the game, I like it less. So I have kind of some mixed feelings on Beyond Good and Evil 2, but I would have liked to have seen more of the little solar system, massive solar system they're putting together. I would like them to stop pushing the games as service stuff with this game and just make it a lovely game to explore with friends and strangers alike. So no Nintendo ports announced for the Cuphead DLC, or excuse me, for Cuphead came to the Switch recently. There was no announcement of Cuphead DLC at Xbox, nor was there any indication as to whether that would be ported over to Switch, though it likely will be. And it kind of received some mixed review and some quiet release. I believe December 18th or middle of December, just this past year. Below was a game that came out on Xbox, and as I said in another part of this video series, I don't play on Xbox. I play on PS4 and Switch. So I was really hoping that this new partnership with Nintendo would allow Below to be released on Switch. I know because the characters and the perspective is pulled way back on that. The characters are small, so it might be a challenge on the system. And my understanding is, though it is not a graphically demanding game, it has a sort of simplified look. I have heard from Capybara Games, the developers of that it is a pretty intensive stuff going on under the hood. Deceptively simple looking, but anyway, I really hope Below it benefits from this new partnership and continuing partnership between Xbox and Nintendo. So we'll see. So this has been Andy with Nerds on the Run. Please stay tuned for our recap on some of the big information coming out of Nintendo. I hope if you enjoy the content. I hope you subscribe if you want to participate in where the channel goes. And please give us feedback in the comments so we know what we're doing and what you all want to, if you like what we're doing. Thank you so much.